Welcome to Golf and the Good Life, your guide to golf travel across the pond. I'm DJ Jones, joined by my friend and colleague Connor Evers. Connor, it is kind of hard to believe that it's already time to start talking about planning for 2024, but here we are.
Yeah, that is for sure. It was funny. I mean, it's February of 23 as we're currently speaking, and in 2022, you'd be like, man, I can't even think about something happening in 2024, and then transition over to the new year, and then it's boom, here we go. Let's start planning for next year, 2024. But looking forward to talking about the possibilities and what we can do for expeditions across the pond in 2024 with you today.
Yeah, if you're out there listening and you're thinking, well, the 2023 travel season hasn't even started yet. How are we talking about 2024? And that's something that we run up against, every day here at HMB is, we have all of these groups that are ready to go this coming summer, and yet we're going to them and saying, hey, it's already time to start talking about 2024. It's a little strange to say, hey, we need to talk about your next trip before you take the one that you're already taking. But that's kind of where things are, especially for the marquee courses across the pond. And at kind of a macro level, it has a lot to do with what we've all heard about, when it comes to travel. Golf travel is not exempt from just the crazy supply demand disparity right now that's going on. We've got this perfect storm where, the pandemic had people put a lot of plans on hold. A lot of folks said, I'm not waiting anymore. If I wait for the right time, that right time might never come. The only right time is right now. And, when you take that and you combine it with an economy that is still pretty strong, despite, some fraying edges, the travel economy itself is still booming. And then add in the pent up demand that we all heard about during the pandemic. There's this huge pent up demand. It was just this drumbeat that lasted for the entire time. And there's a bubble, quite frankly, that has popped, and so everyone is rushing, at least in our case, for those same coveted tee times at some of the marquee names, but then just in golf travel in general. They're all essentially saying, okay, now is the time. To paint a broad brush, that's why, it's time to start talking about 2024. But as we go along, we're going to touch on kind of some of the more specific reasons as it relates to travel across the pond.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's a little crazy. I mean, even we have groups that are traveling this year for 23, and even ones that are still looking and booking currently for 2024 that they planned on doing an expedition in 2020. They technically could have been looking at this trip in 2018, which is crazy to think about. And now they're potentially going this year, or again, looking at next year as well. So like DJ said, with just the pent up demand, I mean, it is the perfect storm. It's a bunch of those things that coming together where, you have to get on these things extremely soon. I think we're going to start off with the kind of the four marquee courses that drive a lot of that demand. And that's the Old Course, Muirfield as well. And then in Ireland, Northern Ireland more specifically, Royal County Down and Royal Portrush. And as a company as Haversham & Baker, we're very fortunate enough to receive guaranteed tee times, the Old Course from the St. Andrews Links Trust. And a lot of people will also want to play Muirfield as well. Muirfield will open up here in a few weeks, and then the Old Course will follow a few weeks after that. And again, we're recording this in the late part of February of 2023. So it's coming up for 2024. So if you're looking at your calendar, you're thinking, wow, do I need to get on this early? And the answer is yes. And the same thing for Royal County Down and Royal Portrush. This is all gonna, kind of start coming really, really quickly. And again, the groups that are on this and really want to play these courses, again, having to book this out super early. You have to get what you want. And when I say what you want, I mean not only just the tee times, but the preferred tee times. If you want to sleep in a little bit more and enjoy your cup of coffee and the view at the Old Course Hotel with breakfast, looking over the golf course, and want to play a little bit later, great, you can do that. If you're more of a morning person and want to hit up the distillery or a pub or a walking tour of St. Andrews in the afternoon, you can do that as well. But again, you have to get on this as soon as possible to make those preferred tee times what you want. So we can't reiterate that enough. But again, that's kind of the reasoning for those 4 courses. And we're going to talk about some other things, not to put anyone, scare anyone, but it is just reality of how that works.
Yeah, I mean, those 4 courses, I mean, the fact is they drive a significant portion of demand from our side of the Atlantic for golfers going over to play the Great Links courses overseas. And you could even add in Royal Dornoch to that list and kind of call it a big 5, if you will. And so you're right. You've got a huge percentage of the golfers that are planning to travel all scrambling for these 5 courses as kind of the top of their itinerary. And just to illustrate, when Muirfield opened their tee sheet this time last year, those tee times were gone in a matter of hours for the peak summer months. Counting down in Portrush did not take much longer. And at least in the case of our guaranteed tee times at the old course, they were gone the minute they arrived. So, if you come to us or anywhere and say, let's say July, and say, okay, I'm ready to start planning my trip for next year, those marquee names are, quite frankly, probably not going to be there for you. Not without a huge amount of flexibility. I mean, you might be able to grab something in the shoulder season or what have you, but the old course, you can probably forget about it. I mean, that's just the reality. Like Connor said, it's not to strike fear or anything like that out to anyone.
Yeah.
That's not what we're here to do. This is all about arming you with the best information in terms of what it's really like on the ground trying to book your trip. And the fact is, the early bird is going to get the tee time.
Yeah. And, those are kind of the ones that we work on super early the year prior. And then it kind of goes in flows. And then the next things are the southwest of Ireland that will then open up in late spring, early summer, which would include Ballybunion, Lahinch, Tralee, Waterville, and as well as Old Head. And it kind of goes in fluctuations. But again, like DJ said, early bird gets the worm with this. And we're just trying to arm like everyone with just details of how this all works. And I think the other thing that's going to affect some demand, and actually I don't think it, I know, and it happened last year when the Open was at the old course. When they watch it on TV, they're going to see it and be like, you know what? I'm not wasting any more time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to go on this trip. And that also increases the odds. So there increases the demand. So again, this year it's at Hoylake. So people are going to want the England Gulf Coast trips and just England in general. They're going to see that, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, last year, as an example, during the 2 weeks surrounding the Open at St. Andrews, and mind you, the St. Andrews is a different animal. It just is. But during the 2 weeks surrounding the Open, we received somewhere around 4 to 5 months worth of inquiries for new bookings. And that will repeat itself, maybe not to the same degree, but there will be a spike. And if you're waiting until August, you're now behind essentially everyone that got that idea during the Open Championship, as far as in line, so to speak. And the other thing to kind of note is that it's not just these big names anymore. The demand has reached such a level that 2 things happen. First is, you secure your tee time, let's say at Muirfield. Well, the very next step is, okay, let's get on North Berwick and Gullen and Dunbar and wherever else you might be playing. And so the same thing happens with those courses. The tee sheet fills up for those peak times, and the golfer that's looking to fill those extra spots or on the itinerary has less to choose from once that happens. And then you also have more and more golfers that are saying, okay, I'm late to the game. I didn't get Muirfield. No big deal. I still want to go. I'm not putting this trip off. And so they say, all right, I'm gonna go to the Highlands. Dornoch doesn't have the time I need, but I can still plan a pretty great trip around Castle Stewart, Tain, Brora, Nairn, and have a great time. the point being that it's not just the big names that you've got to focus on. It really is kind of all, every piece of the puzzle is important.
Yeah, for sure. And from my perspective as an expedition planning manager for H&B, when groups are quote unquote late to book for the next year, and they're going to want a trip where, Muirfield and the Old Course, et cetera, and they don't have that. I mean, that's what we do. We look for other options which maybe have not opened yet or have recently opened yet to book. And you can look at having a trip up to the Highlands, like what DJ said, and with Dornick and Castle Stort and Arran and Fort Roast and Rosemarkie, et cetera. And that's also a great option. So you can look at that for going that next year, or, when we're having a lot of groups right now that are coming to us, and as DJ said, we're essentially pre-selling these packages that include the guaranteed time and no course. And groups come to us right now. I'll be honest, we're pushing a few to 2025, just because the demand is so high. And that's kind of what's happening. If groups that really want that trip, which includes Muirfield and Gold Course guarantee times, I mean, we're really looking at 2025 right now for people that are coming to us currently, just because, again, the demand and the list of groups wanting to go, again, it's the perfect storm, and all those things that come together are making that, again, moving till 2025. So that's just a kind of matter of fact of how everything is. But at a gent come to me about 6 months ago, and they were trying to actually go to Bandon Dunes, and they weren't able to book it because literally their packages for 2023 this year sold out within about a week, in your busy times of the summer, May, June, July, and August, which is crazy. So they thought an alternative would have been a Scotland or Ireland trip, and where they, where it wanted to go was Northern Ireland, and as well as potentially St. Andrews, again, for a trip 2023. Went to us about 6 months ago, in the fall last year, and obviously we were not able to do that, but was able to help them out, and they did a Highlands trip instead. So again, that's just one example of many. And again, it's not even just Scotland and Ireland. It is just golf travel demand at a peak everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, when I say, summer is late, you made a good point there. I mean, summer of the year prior is late for those marquee names. But Connor's right. There are still some pockets of places where you can still put together a trip with a year notice, or perhaps even a touch less, but much beyond that, and you're really going to run into some slim pickings. Royal Dornick is a prime case. They closed their book to new bookings for 2022 in January of 2022. There was no more tee times to be had, and I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing perhaps happens again this year. The demand is like you say, is where it's at. And all of that is to say, there are still some places where you can put together that trip at the somewhat last minute. Northwest Ireland, we talked about it twice on 2 different episodes. We love it. No, there's no hiding that Connor and I are big fans of Northwest Ireland. And it's a great spot, for that person that came late to the game in the planning process. The west coast of Scotland is another one that you can often put together. You run into some tighter availability at Royal Troon if you wait too long, but it's another good option. England's Gulf Coast, we touched on it. Gonna see a spike in demand for after the Open, but it's also one that you can generally kind of work with on shorter notice. And then moving south in England, down toward London and the heathland there, and the Channel Coast with Royal St. George's, those are all great options. They may not have one of the big 5, but you're still going to be able to have a phenomenal trip and skip the 18-month planning.
Yeah, for sure. And St. George's Hill in London, they literally opened their books. It was about a month ago for 2023 for official bookings. So that is super nice, as you can still do stuff fairly late in the London area, as well as the Channel Coast. And my colleague Mike, who's also an expedition planning manager, we joke because he was looking at a group, and this group that was looking to go to Northwest Ireland, they wanted to go to a few different places, but ended up wanting to go there. And we were joking because they could literally get 10:30 a.m. tee times every single day on every single golf course, and they did. It was great. So
for now,
so that was
for now they can. That's going to be changing, but for now they can. Enjoy that while it lasts.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, for sure, which is cool. So, but those are kind of, again, to DJ's point, those are some great destinations and a few others that you're able to do that. I throw Aberdeen in there too, with Royal Aberdeen and Cruden Bay, and great destinations, great golf courses that you can still do if you, again, quote unquote, late to the game. But a couple other things we wanted to point out, with kind of booking this is just some dates to keep in mind. And the Open in July, that's always one to look at. September in St. Andrews is also very, very challenging. The R&A comes in and actually has their autumn meetings as well as some medal play. So there are a few days in the beginning of the month usually that they have open for balloting, but as well as a couple at the end. Again, it's very circumstantial depending on the year and the month per se, but majority 90 to 95% of the month is going to be shot for that as well. And in the Dunhill Links, which is in every October, that's the 5th through the 8th of October of this year as well. That's between Kings Barnes, Carnoustie, as well as the Old Course. So that's a big one where the course is going to be closed during that. That's actually a tour event that's held there. And then, looking at the southwest of Ireland, the biggest one kind of have to look out to is Lahinch. That's really hard to also get in the month of August. This actually, they have the Palmer Cup coming up in 2024, which is great. They also have a members festival every year, which takes up a majority of the month. And then they also have an overseas member guest. So August is, if you will, it's kind of like September at the Old Course. And then the Women's AIG Open at the Old Course is also coming up too. So there's also these different things. And again, it fluctuates each year for closure dates. But again, that's our, job as a tour operator to let you know those dates and kind of book around them.
I'm not entirely sure what the members festival at Lahinch entails, but just a side note to say that I would really love to figure out how to score an invite to that sometime, because it sounds like it'd be a pretty great time.
Yeah,
but
great.
to the all of that is to say that flexibility here just can't be overstated. I mean, the golfer that is willing to be flexible, both in terms of exact courses and the dates of their trip and so forth, is going to be the one that's usually going to pull all this together, especially if you've come late to the game as in the planning process. If you've planned early, you can usually, get what it is that you're looking for, especially if you've got somebody like us in your corner that can really piece it all together. But you've got to be flexible. If you come into it and say, I need to play the St. Andrews area, July 10th to the 20th, which is the Open Championship, it's going to be a challenge, if you haven't started by now in that process. And so it just can't be overstated how important that is, in terms of pulling off the trip that you want. And that, if you're one of these people that has been waiting for that trip, and now is the time, don't wait, start early. That's really just the overall message. And I imagine we'll have to repeat it next year, because knock on wood, it's looking like more of the same as we move forward.
Yeah, that's for sure. It is definitely going to be busy in the coming years, and we don't see the demand going anywhere. Maybe actually increasing, which is great. But if you come to us and say, "Hey, these are the specific dates we have this week to go, and we wanted to play X, X, and X," it's going to be a little more challenging. And to DJ's point, flexibility is definitely key in getting what you want. So I would add that in there as well.
100%. But that's also why you've turned to us, right? Is to try to make it all happen. And we love doing that each and every year for everyone. But overall, Connor, I think we pretty well touched everything here. Anything else to add as it relates to 2024?
No, I think we have that. We've touched on everything. Again, I think what we've talked about is vital. Of putting your dream trip, if you will, together, and again, being flexible is key, and getting on this as soon as possible. Again, depending on where you want to go, obviously, but getting on it as soon as possible. So I think we touched everything. This has been great, DJ.
Absolutely. Well, in our show notes, we will include we have a guide to 2024 trips that it's on our website. We'll drop a link to that in the show notes. But otherwise, if you have any other additional questions as it relates to 2024, shoot us a DM on social media, or feel free to email us. golf@haversham.com. But otherwise, thank you as always for tuning in. We'll be back with you soon with another episode. But until then, we wish you plenty of golf at its finest and life at its best.